course, we're going to turn to Maryland's Senate race right now. The latest poll from the Washington Post and the University of Maryland puts Democrat Angela Alsobooks squarely ahead of former Republican Governor Larry Hogan by 12 percentage points. The poll asked likely Maryland voters, if the election were held today, who would you vote for? Alsobrooks and Hogan, Libertarian Mike Scott, 52% of likely voters picked Alsobrooks over Hogan with a margin of error of plus or minus 3.5%. All right, so let's get at it. More of this closely watched race. We want to welcome back in Erin Cox, she, of course, of the Washington Post, a well-known reporter covering Maryland politics. And Erin, you know, if you were not paying attention to this race and just going by TV ads alone, you wouldn't really know that Angela Alsobooks was up as much as she is in these polls because the Democratic ads have been nonstop. Democrats are really pouring money into this race. Are they worried at all?
I mean, this is the costliest race in Maryland history of any kind. There's no way that Democrats can hold their majority in the Senate if they lose a reliably blue seat to a Republican. And part of the spending is to match the spending from the Republicans, too. I mean, there are outside PACs that are putting tens of millions of dollars into ads. I mean, anybody who's watched TV has heard from both sides a lot. So I think the Democrats have been in a defensive position, despite the fact that Maryland is a really Democratic state from the beginning of this race. And you know, the 12-point margin, both camps say they think it might be smaller on election day, and they're both going to run through the finish and try to make sure that they either keep it ahead like that for the Democrats, or Larry Hogan, who loves being an underdog, will try to, you know, close the gap.
There's also been a change in the Republican ads of late. Some of these third-party PAC groups that were running ads about Alsobrooks' tax problems have now kind of shifted their tone a bit, in that they are now looking at a different approach, trying to appeal to Democratic voters, perhaps splitting their ticket. The Hogan campaign itself is running one of these ads right now. How much stock do you put in to Republicans being able to get some of these Democratic voters to split their ticket?
Well, you know, it is true that a lot of them already plan to, right? Like Kamala Harris, I have the numbers in front of me here. If I could just look down, she's running 61 to 33 ahead of Trump. That's, you know, 9 points better than Angela Alsobrooks is doing. So there are a lot of Democratic voters who are making that choice to be Hogan-Harris voters. And, you know, this is the central thing that any Republican needs to win in Maryland, is to get a lot of Democrats and independents. So in some way, this is the message that they have to send. As far as how much stock I put into it, you know, all of the polling that we have done and everybody else has done has shown that Maryland voters are really savvy, especially folks who care about control of the Senate. And they're not, most of them are not buying that Larry Hogan would be able to be independent in the Senate, and they prefer Democrats to hold the Senate. And that's been the entire campaign of of Angela Alsobooks. You may like Larry Hogan, but he's a Republican, and if you elect him, Republicans will control the Senate. And, you know, that message has been resonating according to all of the polling.
In fact, that's one of the messages that the Democratic ads have been hammering away at lately, of people who have said that they had voted for Hogan, you know, once or twice as governor, but would not do so at this juncture when he's running for the U.S. Senate. How much are the Democrats concerned about that? The people who had just voted for Larry Hogan before might just do it again.
Right. I mean, they ran a lot of focus groups asking voters, you know, what they thought about Larry Hogan. And there was no message that they could give people that generally made people not remember him fondly from the time that he was governor. I mean, he left office with the highest approval ratings on record. And if you ask people about the job that he did as governor, they generally say he did a really good job. And so the message that they have always focused on is less about him, less about his record, and more about the fact that, you know, he has an R next to his name.
Erin Cox from the Washington Post. Always good to talk to you, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're great, Tom. Thank you so much.